Hi everyone, welcome back. And if this is your first video, welcome. And so we're going to talk about communication. So communication is a process of passing information and understanding the same from one person to another through verbal or nonverbal means. And so communication is really important. It's one of the things that definitely help you survive and navigate the world. People find different ways to communicate with one another. What's difficult sometimes is that we don't learn the difference between healthy and unhealthy communication. And I think learning the difference between the two is very important, especially when you're going through traumatic situations. Um, I just think it's important altogether, but again, especially when you're going through traumatic situations. And so I want to talk about the different types of communication because sometimes we don't realize what our communication conveys about who we are as people. So there's three types of communication. There's passive, aggressive, and assertive communication. So during passive communication, a person prioritizes the needs, wants, and feelings of others, even at their own expense. So the person does not express their own needs or doesn't know how to stand up for themselves. This can lead to you being taken advantage of, even by well meaning people who are unaware of passive communicators' needs and wants. And so, this is often identified by a person that's soft spoken, quiet, that allows others to take advantage of them, that prioritizes the needs of others, poor eye contact, look down or away, doesn't express everyone's needs or wants, and lack of confidence. And so I'm using, I want to make sure I say this, I'm using a standard worksheet to just kind of discuss through this so I can make sure I hit every point. But you have seen passive communicators, I'm sure, when you engage with other people. Typically when people say, "Oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine," you want to make sure it really is fine because sometimes it's not fine, but they don't want to cause a fuss. Or it's not fine and they feel really hurt and they're going to store that information and bring it up later. And sometimes you don't know that, but if you have good communication skills, are you sure it's fine? Because I can also do it, the way you want to do it if that feels more comfortable for you. I just want to make sure that I am acknowledging your needs and wants in this situation. And so making sure that a person understands on that passive end that you are willing to acknowledge what they want and need in the situation, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But so typically when you communicate passively, it's how you show up that way in the world. It's indicative of you having low self-esteem and low self-confidence. The next one is aggressive communication. And funny enough, when you communicate aggressively, it's indicative of the same thing. You having low confidence and low self-esteem. So through aggressive communication, a person expresses that only their needs, wants, and feelings matter. The other person is bullied and their needs are ignored. So an aggressive communicator is easily frustrated, speaks in loud and overbearing way, unwilling to compromise, uses criticism, humiliation, and domination, and frequently interrupts or does not listen. And they're disrespectful towards others. So we've been in this situation where a person has aggressively communicated and we know how we felt in those situations. So sometimes people don't, again, learn healthy communication patterns. You learn these aggressive communication patterns, especially after a trauma, because aggressive communication is the first way for you to express, get away from me, leave me alone, I'm not having it. So you'll see a lot of, trauma victims just kind of snap at others or snap off or just, like they said, like easily frustrated because I'm not going to let another person violate me. So I'm going to use these verbal mechanisms to back you down and to remove, so that you can remove yourself away from me. That's my first line of defense. And, sometimes people don't understand that. They're like, so rude, so mean. Well, I'm not rude or mean, but this is what I've learned. My grandmother used to call it barking you down. So she was like, oh, you really barked that person down. And so it's just a way to tell another person to just kind of back up. The last communication, which the one that I feel is definitely healthy, in anything that I discuss in any of the videos, and I think I said this in the last one, is just remember that balance is important. And assertive communication is that balance, right? So assertive communication emphasizes the importance of both people's needs. During assertive communication, a person stands up for their own needs, wants, and feelings, but also listens to and respects the needs of others. Assertive communication is defined by confidence and a willingness to compromise. So, a person that communicates assertively typically listens without interruption, clearly states needs and wants. They're willing to compromise. They stand up for their own rights. They're confident. Their body language is positive, and they have good eye contact. So that's just really an example of somebody being just an assertive communicator. So we're going to go through just one little small scenario so you can just definitely have a better example of all three. So the scenario is a friend asks to borrow your car. This will be a big inconvenience to you. Now, it'll be a big inconvenience. So the passive person is like, yeah, I guess that's fine. Do you need me to fill the tank? Which always cracks me up on this worksheet, because it's like, not only am I going to allow you to inconvenience me, but I'm going to make sure you feel extra comfortable on top of that. Like, I'm going to fill up the tank for you so that you can just kind of inconvenience me for even longer if you wanted to. So the other one is aggressive. So the response would be, no way. Why would I let you borrow my car? You're crazy to even ask. Well, I mean, the person took a shot, and so it's no reason for you to get angry or irritable or yell or call this person names. They took a shot. I mean, and that's all some communication is. People are going to take a shot to see where your boundaries are, and you get to express what your boundaries are. And that's why I love assertive communication, because I understand that if someone is asking me something, they're taking a shot, and I get to, I guess, shoot back. So assertive communication, if they ask me that question, I can say, well, I need my car today, but if I have time, I'll drop you off. And even the second part of that, but if I have time, means if I don't have time, then don't expect me. If I don't have time, then you won't get a ride. And so I think that's okay to do. It's okay to say those kinds of things to other people. Like, we're really not obligated to do anything for anyone. And that's why boundaries are important, because sometimes I'll go back to the terms we learned in the previous videos. When you have porous boundaries, it's really difficult for you to communicate and say, well, no, that really makes me uncomfortable, and I think it's a no for me. So I want to go back again through assertive communication, because this is the big one. So it is again a communication style in which a person stands up for their needs, wants, while also taking in consideration the needs and wants of others without behaving passively or aggressively. So again, it's in the middle. You respect yourself. Your needs and wants and rights are as important as anyone else's. It's fine to express what you want as long as you're respectful towards the rights of others. So basically saying you can say no. You can get your needs and wants met. You can say no as long as you're respecting another person. So instead of saying, no, that's so stupid, I'm not doing that, you can say, well, no, thank you, I'm not really sure that works for me, period. You don't have to give them another explanation. You don't have to make an excuse. You don't have to make a lie. You make up a lie. You can just say, well, that doesn't work for me. No, thank you. I'm the queen of no thank you. That's my favorite. It's my favorite. No thank you. So say no when you need to. You can't make everyone happy all the time. When you need to say no, do so clearly. And again, even the worksheet says without lying about the reasons. Like you don't need to lie. Like no is such a choice. No is a word that people need to become a little bit more comfortable with. So I feel like it's my duty to say no. So I can help you be a little bit more comfortable with that. You know, when you speak assertively and you can express your thoughts and feelings more calmly. So if you're not upset, if you're not upset, people understand you a little bit better because as soon as you get upset when you're communicating, see, I told you you were gonna overreact, and then that negates how you feel. I told you, I knew it, I knew it. Well, then now you start to feel bad. Like, am I overreacting? So I mean, there's a lot that comes with poor communication or unhealthy communication. And so, just a few examples of assertive communication, because again, I want to make sure this hits home. So, an example would be I've been feeling frustrated about doing most of the chores around the house. I understand that you're busy, but I need help. How can we make this work? And so most of us don't speak this way, I mean, because um, this is very, I don't know how to say it. It's very proper speech. So you can say, I, I'm feeling frustrated about cleaning up everything, and I know you're busy. Like I've seen you, working and trying to get things done, but I really need some help. Like, can we come up with a solution? And that's just kind of to me, a regular way to say it, because sometimes when you think about saying something in a proper way, it doesn't feel natural to you. So you can change it up any way you want to, as long as you're using I statements, and then because we'll talk about that later. So I won't be able to take you to the airport on Friday. I've had a long week and I want to rest. So I love this person didn't lie and say, well, I have other stuff to do, or I have to pick my mother up, or I made other plans. No, I had a long week. I'm tired. Period. Period. No excuses. You don't have to lie. You don't have to feel uncomfortable. Just, I don't want to, because I'm tired. Um, and I think I know the more you speak up for yourself, the more you assert your wants and needs, the better you feel about who you are. And it feels like the first couple of times you do it, it's going to feel a little uncomfortable. It's going to feel foreign. You may walk away and have like these thoughts in your head, like, oh my God, this person's going to hate me. They're not going to like me. Well, they are, because sometimes people understand your right to say no, or your right to assert your needs and wants before you do. So they may not respond in a way that you think they will. And sometimes if people do respond poorly, I don't want to say if this is a concrete answer, but one thing could be is that you've allowed people to just kind of impede your boundaries, which means you've just allowed people to just kind of run over you a little bit. And so when you do finally say no, they're like, how dare you? And it's like, it's okay that I said no. You'll be fine. So I'm having a hard time sleeping when your music is on. What if you use headphones, or can I help you move the speakers to another room? Like, again, that's an example of just kind of having a conversation and expressing a thing, versus just getting angry and not saying anything. I mean, well, yeah, getting angry and not saying anything, which is the passive communication. Passive aggressive, like, is a sub communication. So that would be someone slamming doors, slamming dishes, doing little like petty things to your items, or saying like little petty things behind your back. Or I think sneak dissing. I don't know you guys use that term, or young people use that term anymore, but I always liked it. So there we are. So another good part of communication is, well, it's like reflection. So reflection is a technique that can quickly help you become a better listener, because a lot of people think communication, like using your words is the most important part of like communicating between you and another person. Listening is a very important part also. So when you reflect and you will repeat back what someone has said to you, but in their own words, this shows that you didn't hear the other person, but you are trying to understand them. So this is a technique we learned in school when I was going for, to be a therapist, is just reflecting back. And it really does work. Like you're not parroting that person. Parroting means you're repeating it back word for word. But reflection is almost like you're paraphrasing and using your own words so a person can feel heard. It really helps. Also, reflection really helps with validating a person's feelings. Um, and again, we'll get to that later. But reflecting what another person says can feel funny at first, and you might think the other person will be annoyed that you're repeating them. But however, when used correctly, reflection receives a positive reaction and it can drive the conversation forward, because again, that person feels heard and that person feels as though like you're understanding them. And that's why I said, not parroting, because if you're parroting, then that can come off as condescending, it can come off as negating, it can come off very negative. So, then the tone of voice you use when you're reflecting is really important, because if you say it in a certain way and it can sound off to that person, it can sound like sarcasm. So you want to make sure you have a very even tone, a very just a really even tone, because a lot of times with assertive communication, that even tone really helps, because when you watch the way you raise or lower your voice, and it is really is very. I know it seems like you're just kind of nitpicking, but it very much so. It's so very, very important, because people are very, very sensitive about, again, your tone of voice and the way you say things. And we've all heard that. Like, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. And it's like, well, how did I say it? How did I say it? But it's just being very important. I'm saying it's being very important, but being clear is very important. Watching your tone of voice. So I always use that just kind of midline voice, especially in therapy, because you want to be very, very sure and clear. No one is walking away. So one example is of reflection practice, as they say. I was in a bad mood yesterday because work has been so stressful. I can't keep up with everything I have to do. And so what they taught us in school was, I hear you saying you were in a bad mood yesterday because you were stressed. Um, and I know it's difficult for you. And did I hear you saying you can't keep up with everything you have to do? And so it's just figuring out a way to repeat that thing back to a person, because again, when someone is coming to you with a frustration, they want to be heard. And so that's where being heard is important, and that's where active listening comes in. So active listening is treating listening as an active process rather than a passive one. We have ruined this by being on our phones and trying to have a conversation with a person, because that's splitting your attention. And so think about, if you're having a conversation with someone and you're on your phone, your communication is split. If you're in the living room with the television on or music on and the phone, and the person is trying to have a conversation, it's split three ways. That's the even worse scenario to have a conversation. If there's background noise, television on, phone in your hand, and then this person communicating, you're not going to be able to convey the things you need to convey or understand the things you need to understand. So put away distractions. No watching television, no using your phone, and no doing other things while listening to someone give you a message. Um, and I mean, and so when you have like these nonverbal communication, well, I don't want to say nonverbal, when you have these verbal communications, like those verbal cues to let a person know you're engaged, those are very important. And when we're distracted and we use them like, yeah, 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 we feel like people are hearing us, but when they come back and repeat the information, you know, it can turn into this thing. It can blow up because it seemed as though you were paying attention because you were using like those verbal cues, but you really weren't. So you want to be attentive when someone comes to you with something and use those verbal acknowledgments when you're really paying attention. So encourage sharing. So you ask open-ended questions like, how do you feel when? What is it like to? Can you tell me more about it? And so those are just, it's really, encouraging the other person to share or asking more questions so that you can understand. A lot of our miscommunication comes from not sharing enough, not asking open-ended questions, and just assuming what the person means. Anytime that I'm having difficulty, when so let's say this, like we all have those moments where we miscommunicate things, but if I'm having a really important conversation, my job is to ensure that I'm asking enough questions that I can understand, repeat what I think I understand so that person can say yes or no, like, that's not really what I meant. What I meant was this. And so understanding, just understanding how to allow someone to share without over talking them, without getting overly emotional, and just understand that a lot of times when people communicate and share, it's from their perspective. Your perspective may differ. We're not getting into that point right now, but just understand that it's their perspective. So strive to understand, be present. Listening means paying attention to body language, tone, and verbal content. I just went on a whole diatribe about your tone and how it's important. Body language is important because if I'm coming to you, let's think of it in a mother-child scenario. If your child is coming to tell you something that they're very nervous about and scared to tell you, but if you're sitting on the couch looking up or no, well, let's do it this way. Like you're standing in front of the couch with your arms folded and you're looking down at them. What's the likelihood that that child is going to tell you what they need to tell you because your posture is already it's already defensive and you're just kind of overpowering them. So the best thing to do is to sit right next to that person, get to their level, maintain eye contact, and try to do a comforting gesture if you can. And that allows the person to know that you're there to comfort them and you're not defensive. And so whatever you're trying to communicate to me, I'm open to receiving it and I'm willing to try to understand it. I hope I didn't go too fast there. So instead of, it's just, again, letting someone know that you're willing to hear them. And so the last thing is listen with an open mind. Your job is to understand this speaker's point of view. I just said that, but I'm going to use this more technical definition so you can understand what that looks like. So even if you don't agree, avoid forming opinions and making judgments until you fully understand their perspective. A lot of times we fight because we understand what a person meant. But if they're telling you what they mean and it's opposite of what you thought they meant, give them the benefit of the doubt. Like you meant to do that. You meant to say that. Well, you won't let me explain whether I meant to or not. So you don't know if I meant to. So sometimes we have to be a little bit more gentle with people and just try to understand where they're coming from. It's nothing more frustrating than being misunderstood by another person, especially if you really want to be understood. And so I talked about I statements in the beginning, and what that means is when you feel like you're being blamed for something, it's common for you to respond and be defensive. And so the moment someone says, "You meant to do that," now I have to defend myself because you don't know what I meant to do. You're making an assumption. So I statements are a simple way of speaking that will help you avoid the trap of blame, right? So I statement is taking responsibility for your own feelings while tactfully describing the problem. So I feel, so an example would be I feel, and I'm use in this blank space, put your emotion, word, when, and then explain. So I feel sad when you raise your voice at me. I feel afraid when you raise your voice at me. I didn't blame you and say, you yelled at me and now I'm upset, or you yelled at me, you're mean, you meant to do this, you're disrespectful, you're rude, you're all these things. Because once you start on that once you start on that line of thinking and speaking to that person, now I need to defend myself. So examples would be of blaming is, you can't keep coming home so late, it's inconsiderate. Well, now I'm upset because what if I had a flat tire? What if I had to work late? Any number of things could have gone wrong. And it wasn't that I was being inconsiderate. It's just that something happened. Like, what are you talking about? Right? So an I statement would be, I feel worried when you come home late. I can't sleep. So that person gets to say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to worry you, but so and so happened, and yeah, next time I'll give you a call or I'll shoot you a text or something. I'm really sorry." Another example, blaming. "You never call me. I guess we just won't talk anymore." Well, depending on who you're dealing with, that person will be like, "Okay, fine, we won't talk anymore. Like, what are you talking about? I do call you. You don't call me." Like it turns into this thing. But an I statement is, I feel hurt when you go so long without calling me. I'm afraid you don't care. Right? When it's said this way, the person gets to say, "Oh, no, I do care about you. This is what's been going on," or I'll do a really better job, or "I'll do a better job communicating with you from here on out, because I don't want you to feel like I don't care, because I do." So you're giving the person an opportunity to explain to you what's going on, and you're giving them the opportunity to understand their perspective versus throwing your assumption off on them. And it's really important to give people an opportunity um, to just communicate what they think and feel. One another important communication skill is soft startups. So communication is very, very, again, we weren't taught how to have healthy communication. A lot of us didn't see healthy communication growing up. And so soft startups is just kind of helping you, is helping you set up a positive tone, and to help, and it also helps to resolve conflict, because that's one of the major things sometimes when it comes to people in communication. I don't want to start conflict, so a passive person will just go along with it. I don't. I'm going to respond to conflict, like that aggressive communications. Like I'm gonna stop it before it starts. Um, so in assertive, again, is right there in the middle. So with a soft startup, you save the conversation for a calm moment. So wait for a time when you and your partner are alone, and I don't want to say when you and a person are alone. I'll say that instead, without distraction or interruptions. Make sure you and that person are relaxed, not tired, hungry, or stressed. Because again, like if your body is in survival mode, you're not really going to be thinking straight. I think on they call it hangry, like when people are hangry, you really don't want to mess with them because, it's a lot going on. I need food, I need sustenance before you start this foolishness. Um, so use gentle body language and tone of voice. More times than not, my tone is very in the middle because I watch my inflections because depending on the way you say a thing, people will take it a certain way. So take an attitude of teamwork and problem solving rather than arguing and blaming. So I will say a thing like, I noticed that we've been, kind of off here lately. Have you? And if they say yes, it's like, well, I don't. That makes it. I don't like the way that feels. That doesn't feel good. So, do you have a few minutes to discuss how we can just kind of get back on track? That's not saying, oh, you've been rude to me or you've been so nasty to me, like you've been snapping. That's basically saying that, I don't feel like we've been vibing here lately. Let's talk so we can get this train back on track. Speak calmly without raising your voice. Avoid hurtful body language such as rolling your eyes, scowling, or mocking. Is the moment you roll your eyes, the conversation becomes defensive. Use I statements again to express how you feel. Focus on how a problem is affecting you rather than assigning blame. Because the moment you blame, I need to defend. Say I feel and when. So we already went through that, so I won't, just kind of beat that dead horse. Describe the problem clearly. So this means that you may have to stop and figure out what the problem is before you start the conversation and then prepare yourself to have a conversation. Because a lot of times when you have experienced a trauma or you're in an emotional place, it's really difficult for you to put your finger on what's going on with you. It would be best for you to put a finger on what that is before you present it to another person. It's nothing more challenging than trying to figure out what's wrong with a person when they don't know what's wrong with them. And then that's when people get frustrated and be like, you're too emotional, you're dramatic, you're a drama queen. Well, I'm not. I'm just having difficulty expressing what's going on with me. So another thing is be respectful. Make a polite request rather than a demand. Thank the person for listening and addressing the problem. And I know all of that seems clinical, but like when you're in session with your therapist, they walk you through these things so it doesn't feel as clinical and it doesn't feel foreign to you. Like it begins to feel comfortable using it over time. I have become I won't say expert because like I'm always growing, but I have become very good at just kind of communicating my thoughts and feelings without another person feeling as though I am attacking them, coming for them in any way. And I'm okay with receiving communication that I guess could be perceived as negative. It's up to, I have a choice in whatever communication a person brings to me to either say no, okay, or I don't agree with that. Like, and then that's it. So, I think it's really important to understand that um, after a trauma, sometimes communication can be difficult. Sometimes you don't want to communicate and you just want to shut down. And that's important too. People are very, very awkward talking to people who have experienced a trauma or people who are having a mental health moment or a mental health crisis. Folks get very uncomfortable. The words get stuck or they come out wrong. And so I'm not saying that you have to worry about them. I'm saying for you, you can ask people because this is where assertiveness comes in. I understand that you're trying to comfort me, but I need a minute. I understand that you want to act, you want to know certain things, but for right now, I'm not ready to share. Or can you stop asking me that because it's upsetting me? I'm not in the space of wanting to share. However way you put it, just make sure you put that boundary up so that people can understand that this is not something I should be asking this person right now. I ran a senior citizen group years ago, and I feel like I said this, but excuse me if I'm repeating, blame it on my age. But I had client who's passed away now. She was brutally attacked, and everybody in the area in which she lived in knew about this attack. Everybody. Amazingly, people would come up and ask her about the details. I have never, I just don't even, I mean, this is, I can't, I'm still baffled to this day why someone would ask another person the details about an attack or a violation. It's very, very strange to me. But anyway, the woman eventually um, closed up in her house and wouldn't go out. And she was just severely depressed and lonely because her fear was if she went out, then people would ask her questions. And because she grew up in the South, to a certain extent, she felt obligated to answer. And the most freeing thing I ever told her was to tell them no. Like, that's a very personal question that I don't feel like I want to answer, or that I don't want to answer, or I don't know if you should be asking me something so personal. But putting that boundary up, because to me, if they have the audacity to ask, then I have the audacity to say, why are you asking me that? That's very uncomfortable for me. So we either need to change the subject or something else needs to happen. They're gonna have to figure it out. And I don't mean that in a way of, just kind of being sassy or smart or anything. That I mean that in a way that I can very much so verbally tell you to back off something that's personal, that's private, that's sensitive. Whatever it is to me, you need to move away. I can you guys can't see me, but I'm gesturing and put my hand up because mentally that's a stop for me. When you ask me something personal, I can definitely put a stop to it by saying no. That's personal, that's private, or that's none of your business. That's fair to say too. Again, I don't want to belabor the point, but just communication is very, very, very important. Internal communication, that'll be my last point, is very important. What you say to yourself is more important sometimes than what you say to others. Especially when you're going through a tragic situation or a trauma, be careful what you say to yourself. Things like stupid, dumb, idiot, it was your fault, you knew better. All those things can be very, very damaging because your brain is picking that up. And I know that sounds funny because it's coming from your brain, but your brain is still picking it up. So it's just sitting, excuse me, it's sitting and swirling around in your brain. And it's just going to it's going to make it a very negative and dark space. So the first thing we want to do is just shut that down. We're shutting down that negative self-talk as much as we can, because it won't all go away, but as much as we can. And that's when we want to use our affirmations. I talked about that in our first video, I think it was. Use your affirmations. Be very balanced with the things that you say to yourself. Think about it in the way that you speak to your best friend. Most of us, we're very gentle and loving and caring with our best friends. So if our best friend comes to us crying, like, girl, I did something so dumb, I don't know what I was thinking, and she lays it out for you, you're not going to say, ooh, that was dumb. What were you thinking? Wow. You're not going to do that. You're going to just hug her and be like, girl, I'm so sorry. You made a mistake. We all make mistakes. Like, things will get better. Like, you will comfort her. You'll make sure she's okay. You'll make sure she's loved. You'll make sure she understands that, she's still a good person. You'll do all that for your best friend, but when it comes to you, you'll say like the most negative, like damaging things to yourself. And if you get nothing from what we just discussed in this like 40-minute video, understand that start to speak to you the same way you speak to your best friend. Be gentle, be encouraging, be understanding, be kind. Um, and I think that's it. Like that's my little art of communication. So if you guys have any questions, you can email me. We can talk a little bit more about it. But I am happy you joined me, and I'll see you next video.